Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to hear me today not just with your ears, but with your spirit, because what I'm about to share isn't just history, it's destiny. This is not just about a place on the map, it's about a movement in the making. I'm talking about Persia, I'm talking about Iran, and I'm talking about the divine script that was written long before time began. You see, there are moments in life when a nation is not just surviving, it's being positioned. Positioned for purpose, positioned for prophecy, and Iran, yes, Iran is one of those nations, misunderstood by the world, misrepresented by the media, but never forgotten by God. There's a fire coming from ancient roots, a light flickering through generations of silence, a promise buried in scrolls, and a future that refuses to be denied. It is written, it is sealed, it is rising, and today we're going to open our eyes to the truth that destiny delayed is not destiny denied. So if you're ready to see with spiritual eyes, if you're ready to feel the power of purpose pounding through prophetic pages, then lean in, because the biblical destiny of Iran is not just a story, it's a revelation, and that revelation is calling us higher, stronger, and deeper into understanding what God is doing right now. Persia's divine role in biblical prophecy and end time fulfillment is a truth that has echoed through the corridors of time, written in ancient scrolls and spoken by prophets who never even saw the modern map we now know as Iran. And yet, the fingerprints of Persia are unmistakably embedded in the divine narrative. The Bible does not merely reference Persia in passing, it honors Persia with specific purpose and lasting influence. From the days of King Cyrus to the prophecies of Daniel, Isaiah, and Ezekiel, Persia emerges not as a backdrop, but as a key player in God's unfolding plan. Cyrus the Great, a Persian king, was named by the prophet Isaiah over 150 years before his birth. God called him my shepherd and his anointed, showing the extraordinary way Persia was chosen to facilitate divine will. Imagine that a Gentile king from a land most today would not associate with biblical destiny, used mightily by God to release his people and restore his temple. That's not a political move, that's a prophetic moment. This shows us that divine purpose is not limited by nationality or religion. God uses who he chooses when he chooses, and Persia was chosen to bless his people, to honor his covenant, and to make way for restoration. In a world where nations rise and fall by power, God elevates nations by prophecy. Persia's ancient past is filled with clues to its future. It played a central role in the return of the Jews from Babylonian captivity, and that same spirit of deliverance is yet to rise again. It was Persia that stood with Daniel, not against him. It was in the courts of Persian kings that the fate of God's people was debated and decided with divine intervention. Esther, a Jewish queen in the Persian Empire, saved her people from genocide. These are not coincidences. These are confirmations that God embedded his plan in Persia's identity. Fast forward to the book of Ezekiel, chapter 38, where Persia is mentioned as part of the end-time alignment of nations. This isn't about politics, it's about positioning. The very mention of Persia in a future global alliance shows that Iran is not absent from the prophetic endgame. It is strategically included, and whether in alliance or opposition, its presence will fulfill what has been written. Even in conflict, even in confusion, prophecy stands true. That means that Iran's role, though controversial today, is essential in the spiritual dimension of what is unfolding on earth. This is not about fear, it's about understanding. And understanding leads to revelation. Persia's prophetic role is also linked to the rising spiritual hunger seen within its people. Despite decades of suppression, Iran today has one of the fastest, growing underground Christian movements in the world. That is not accidental. That is divine acceleration. God is awakening hearts in a land that once released his people physically, and now he's releasing them spiritually. The same ground that once saw the decree to rebuild Jerusalem is now seeing souls rebuilt from within. That is prophecy manifesting beyond political headlines. That is God writing his will into the soil of a nation. The Bible shows us that Persia is not a forgotten place. It is a focused place. Nations can be judged by their rulers, but God sees the people. And in Iran, among the cries for justice and freedom, there is a cry for truth. That cry reaches heaven. That cry is part of destiny. Prophetic destiny does not come to pass without pressure. It does not rise without resistance. And what we are witnessing is the shaking before the rising, the tension before the transformation. Every prophecy concerning Persia points to a time of divine involvement, a time when the spiritual curtain will be pulled back, and the world will witness the role Iran is designed to play. Many people focus only on the threats, the politics, the fear, and the danger. But behind all that noise is a divine narrative. The same God who raised up Cyrus, who preserved his people through Esther, who protected Daniel in the courts of Persia, is still moving. The nation we call Iran today is standing on ancient promises, whether they recognize them or not. And the power of prophecy is that it does not require permission from man. It only needs time, and time is now pressing forward to fulfillment. The historical resilience of Iran as evidence of spiritual preservation is a testimony that stretches across millennia. Through every empire that has risen and fallen, through invasions, wars, and cultural shifts, Iran, once known as Persia, has never lost its identity. That, in itself, is a miracle. Empires greater in number and might have vanished from the pages of history, absorbed or erased by the tides of time. But Persia remains. It continues to speak, to stand, and to stir the attention of the world, even when it is misunderstood or misrepresented. This persistence, this ability to endure despite opposition, is not just political. It is spiritual. For a nation to survive with its heritage, its language, and its cultural essence intact over thousands of years, there must be more at play than strategy or survival. There must be purpose. There must be preservation driven by divine intent. Looking back, one can see the fingerprints of God in the survival of Persia. The land has faced everything from the Mongol invasions to internal revolutions, from foreign occupations to modern geopolitical isolation. And yet, it continues to rise. Each time the world has counted Iran out, something within it refuses to fade. That something is not nationalism alone, it is destiny. Nations without prophetic purpose often lose themselves in the whirlwinds of history, but Iran keeps re-emerging on the world stage. There is something spiritually preserved within its borders, something sacred, something ancient, and something powerful that has yet to be fully revealed. Throughout biblical history, nations like Babylon, Assyria, and Rome rose and fell with finality. Their names are now history lessons, not living identities. But Persia defies that pattern. Persia lives on, not only in history books but in prophecy, and not only in prophecy but in the hearts of its people. Even under harsh regimes and religious crackdowns, there remains a remnant of resilience. A spiritual fire burns beneath the surface, waiting for its appointed time. That fire is not new. It's the same fire that guided Cyrus to issue a decree for the Jews to return and rebuild their temple. It's the same fire that lit up the courage of Esther, who risked everything in the Persian court to save her people. It's the same fire that Daniel carried when he served under Persian kings, praying daily, never compromising, always faithful. That kind of fire doesn't die. It may go underground. It may be forced into silence, but it does not vanish, because what God preserves, no man can destroy. In today's Iran, we witness layers of contradiction. On one hand, there is state control, censorship, and religious oppression. On the other hand, there is a spiritual hunger that refuses to be silenced. People are having dreams, visions, and encounters with God that bypass the religious structures imposed upon them. That is not a cultural shift. That is a spiritual awakening, and this awakening is not random. It is connected to the same divine preservation that kept Persia from extinction. It is connected to the same voice that spoke through prophets of old and declared Persia's role in God's plan. This resilience is not just about national pride or cultural depth. It is about divine assignment. When God assigns purpose to a nation, He also protects its essence. He allows trials, He permits testing, but He does not abandon the seed He has planted. And in Persia, that seed is still growing. The roots go deep into scriptures, into prophetic dreams, into divine callings that have yet to be made visible to the world. It's why Iran cannot be ignored. It's why every time the world turns its eyes away, something happens that brings it back into focus. Because Iran is a reminder that what God preserves, He also prepares. The resilience of the Iranian people, their courage in the face of tyranny, their yearning for freedom and truth, these are not just human traits. They are signs of spiritual preservation. They are markers of a deeper purpose that stretches beyond politics or religion. They reflect a story that is still being written, a role that is still being revealed. And while many may not yet understand what Iran is truly carrying, the evidence is in its endurance. The story of Persia has never been fully told because its final chapters are still unfolding. And that unfolding is directly tied to God's timeline, not man's. A prophetic awakening rising from Iran to influence global transformation is not only possible, it is already underway, often unseen by the world, but undeniable to those who are paying attention in the spirit. While headlines focus on nuclear programs, political unrest, and ideological conflict, something deeper is stirring beneath the surface. Something ancient and divine is being revived, something that no regime can silence and no system can stop. The very soil of Iran, once home to prophetic giants and godly interventions, is again being stirred for a divine purpose. The underground church is not just growing, it is thriving, and its growth is nothing short of supernatural. People who have never read the Bible, who have been raised under strict religious control, are experiencing dreams and visions of Jesus. They are encountering the truth not through human teaching, but through divine revelation. This is the beginning of a prophetic awakening. It is not a political revolution. It is a spiritual one. It does not come from governments or institutions. It comes from God. And when God begins to move in a land that has been bound in darkness, the light that shines out is impossible to ignore. In Iran today, that light is piercing through generations of oppression, and it is awakening hearts that have been longing for something more. This longing is not new. It has been planted in the DNA of a people whose ancestors once walked beside the chosen people of God, whose kings once honored the God of Israel, and whose land was once a bridge between the East and the divine story of redemption. God is not done with Iran. In fact, some of the most powerful testimonies of faith in our time are coming from within Iran's borders. There are believers risking their lives to worship, to pray, to share the message of Jesus with their neighbors. There are families who have turned their homes into churches, knowing that discovery could cost them everything, But still they gather, still they sing, still they speak the name of Jesus. That kind of boldness is not born from religion, it is born from encounter. And encounter is the hallmark of awakening. When people meet the living God, they are never the same. And when a nation begins to encounter him collectively, that is the seed of transformation. The prophetic awakening in Iran is not only for the sake of its people, it is part of a larger global shift. Iran holds a strategic place geographically, historically, and prophetically. Its awakening is not isolated, it will ripple across regions. The Middle East has long been viewed as a place of conflict, but God sees it as a place of convergence. A place where nations will come to know his name, where ancient prophecies will be fulfilled, and where revival will not look like the West. It will look like obedience in the face of persecution. The church in Iran is modeling that right now. They are showing the world what faith under fire looks like, and in doing so, they are igniting something far beyond their own borders. Prophecy points to a time when the gospel will reach every tribe and tongue, and Iran is a key part of that mission. Not just as a recipient, but as a sender. A day is coming when out of Iran will rise voices, evangelists, prophets, teachers, and leaders who will carry the fire of revival into other nations. It is already beginning. What started underground is growing roots. What has been watered with tears and blood is now bearing fruit. The world may not recognize it yet, but heaven does. And as heaven moves, earth must align. This awakening is not flashy. It's not publicized, but it is powerful, and it carries the weight of prophecy. It carries the legacy of Daniel's prayers, Esther's courage, Cyrus's obedience. It carries the hope of a people who have been hidden, but not forgotten. And now the hidden is being revealed, the silence is being broken, the oppressed are becoming the carriers of truth. That is how God works. He takes what is overlooked and raises it up for his glory. Iran is being raised, and what God is awakening there will not only change that nation, it will challenge the world to remember that destiny is never dictated by man's opinion, but by God's divine design. So as we stand at the crossroads of prophecy and reality, let us not see Iran merely through the lens of politics or history, but through the divine perspective of purpose and promise. Persia's past was never disconnected from God's plan, and its future is not exempt from his hand. From the anointed decree of Cyrus to the silent strength of the underground church today, Iran has been preserved, positioned, and prepared for such a time as this. The resilience of its people, the spiritual hunger within its borders, and the prophetic echoes of Scripture all point to one undeniable truth. God is not finished with Iran. In fact, he is just beginning to reveal what has been hidden for generations. And when God moves, no force on earth can stop it. The world may doubt, but prophecy does not. What was written will be fulfilled, and Persia's destiny will not only be revealed, it will be realized.